The next morning, Ella told Angela everything. Angela listened carefully before revealing her own truth. She never saw Anne as a person, only as something monstrous. The sisters made a pact. They wouldn't tell their parents. They would find out the truth themselves, and what they would discover would destroy everything. On their way home, they stopped by Anne's house, their hearts pounding as they approached, and as though she had been expecting them, Anne welcomed them in with a warm smile, her home perfectly arranged, every object in place, creating an atmosphere of unnatural perfection that felt more staged than lived in. The girls forced smiles as they sat, their eyes scanning the room, searching for anything that might reveal the truth. And it was then that Ella noticed a picture frame on the wall, drawing her attention with an invisible pull. Inside the frame were faces. Anne standing among a group of people, neighbors they had seen from afar, along with children who they play with after school, and some other familiar yet unrecognizable faces. Their expressions frozen in a way that felt wrong, and when Ella asked if they were family, Anne replied calmly,
"Yes, we are all like one family," her voice carrying a weight that made the words feel heavier than they should have been. The girls nodded slowly, their unease growing, and after a few more minutes they left, their minds filled with questions, unaware that they had just stepped closer to a truth that would soon reveal itself in ways far more terrifying than they could imagine. That night, the family gathered for dinner, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy despite the growing unease that lingered in the house. And for a moment, it almost felt like things were returning to normal, their laughter soft but present, their conversations flowing gently as they ate. But the illusion shattered when Daniel suddenly froze, his eyes locked on an empty chair, pointing, his voice trembling, claiming that a young boy was sitting there, staring at him. The rest of the family looked at the chair and saw nothing, their confusion turning quickly into alarm as Daniel's body collapsed, and before anyone could react, he fell to the floor, blood trickling from the side of his mouth, as panic erupted in the room, their calm replaced by chaos as they rushed to get him to the hospital. The drive felt endless, filled with fear and desperate prayers, and when they finally arrived, Daniel was taken in immediately, leaving the family shaken and unsure of what had just happened. Days passed, but no diagnosis came, only uncertainty and growing fear. Meanwhile, Mrs. Smith began hearing whispers from Daniel's empty room at night, soft voices that stopped the moment she entered. One night, she followed the sound and found Daniel standing in his room, covered in blood, holding a knife. He lunged at her and she screamed, struggling until Mr. Smith arrived, only to find her alone on the floor. The hospital later confirmed Daniel had never left his bed, leaving Mrs. Smith questioning her sanity. That night, the air inside the house felt heavier than usual, as though something unseen had settled into every corner, watching, waiting, breathing along with them. Ella lay in her bed, restless and uneasy, her mind replaying everything she had seen: the blood in the shower, Anne's unmoving figure by the window, the strange photograph. Eventually, exhaustion pulled her into sleep, but what followed was not rest. She found herself standing in a cemetery under a dim, flickering sky, surrounded by the very people from the photograph in Anne's house. They were laughing, dancing,
celebrating in a way that felt wrong, their movements unnatural, their smiles stretched too wide. The ground beneath them was covered in graves, yet they treated it like a party ground, and when Ella looked down, she realized she was standing among them. Suddenly, all the laughter stopped. Every head turned toward her at the exact same moment, their eyes hollow and dark. The silence that followed was suffocating, and before she could move, they began walking toward her slowly, their feet dragging across the ground with a sound that echoed like whispers. Ella tried to run, but her legs refused to move, as though something held her in place. Within seconds, they were upon her, their cold hands grabbing her arms, her shoulders, her throat. She struggled, screaming, but no sound came out as they tightened their grip, forcing her down. Their faces twisted into monstrous forms, no longer human, their mouths opening unnaturally wide, as if to consume her.
In the real world, Ella's body was being thrown violently against the wall, her head hitting with a sickening sound. Blood began to stream from her forehead, her nose, even the corners of her eyes. Angela woke up to the noise and ran into the room, only to find her sister convulsing on the floor, her body moving as though something invisible was attacking her. She screamed for her parents, her voice breaking in terror. By the time her parents rushed in, Ella was barely conscious, her breathing shallow, her body limp. Panic took over as they carried her out, but just then Mrs. Smith's phone rang from the living room, the hospital calling, and the timing felt too precise, too deliberate, as though something had orchestrated it all. At the hospital, chaos consumed the family as doctors rushed Ella into emergency care, leaving Mrs. Smith pacing the halls in tears while Mr. Smith tried to remain composed. Mrs. Smith's fear had now turned into certainty. Something was terribly wrong with the house, but Mr. Smith refused to accept it, insisting there had to be a logical explanation. Their arguments grew heated, echoing through the sterile hospital corridors, their voices carrying frustration, fear, and disbelief in equal measure. Mrs. Smith accused him of ignoring the signs, of putting their family in danger, while Mr. Smith accused her of losing her grip on reality. At work, Mr. Smith shared his experiences with a colleague who listened carefully before asking where he lived, and when Mr. Smith described the location, his expression shifted, his confusion turning into concern as he insisted that the area was known only as a cemetery, a place where no houses had ever been built. Determined to prove him wrong, he invited him to visit, confident that seeing the house would silence his doubts once and for all. But when they arrived, everything changed. Mr. Smith pointed directly at where his house stood, the red roof, the white walls, the place he had been living in, but his colleague saw nothing. To him, the land was filled only with graves, old and weathered, stretching endlessly across the land. No house, no road, no sign of life. Daniel's voice trembled as he asked again, pointing desperately, but the answer remained the same. And as they left, unease thick in the air, Daniel's world began to crumble. The weight of that moment lingered heavily on Mr. Smith's mind, and on his way to the hospital to tell his wife what he has discovered, Mr. Smith's mind raced with questions, fear gripping him in a way he had never experienced before. The road ahead blurred as he tried to process the impossible truth that the house, their home, might not even exist in the world of the living. His hands tightened on the steering wheel, his breathing uneven, his thoughts spiraling out of control.
Then, without warning, a shadow moved across the road, too fast, too unnatural, and before he could react, his car swerved violently. The crash was sudden and devastating. Metal crushing against metal, glass shattering into the air like shards of ice. By the time anyone arrived, Mr. Smith was already gone, his body lifeless, his face frozen in an expression of shock and horror. News of his death reached Mrs. Smith at the hospital, and the moment she heard it, something inside her broke completely. The last piece of stability she had clung to vanished, leaving only fear and grief behind. Alone now, with 2 children in critical condition and one traumatized beyond words, Mrs. Smith knew she could no longer ignore the truth. Whatever was happening was real, and it was closing in on her family. But even in her desperation, she had no idea how to fight something she could barely understand, something that seemed to exist between life and death, waiting patiently to claim them all. Grief consumed Mrs. Smith as she struggled to cope with the loss of her husband and the worsening condition of her children. And as she walked through a market one day, lost in her thoughts, an old woman approached her, her presence sudden and unsettling, her voice low as she warned her to leave her home immediately, that the place she was living in was not meant for the living, and if she stayed, every soul under that roof would die. She instructed her to use holy water, to cleanse every corner, and to leave at dawn without looking back. Her words urgent and filled with a certainty that sent chills through Mrs. Smith's body. But before Mrs. Smith could ask who she was or how she knew all of this, the woman vanished into the crowd as though she had never been there at all, leaving Mrs. Smith shaken and confused. When Mrs. Smith returned home, she found Anne sitting calmly in her living room, smiling as if she had been waiting all along. The sight sent a chill down Mrs. Smith's spine, and for the first time she confronted her directly, demanding to know why she was there. Anne's response was simple, almost playful.
I don't need an invitation to come into anywhere around here. We're all friends, after all, aren't we?
But there was something in her tone, something beneath her smile, that revealed the truth Mrs. Smith had been avoiding. Anne was not human, and she never had been. Mrs. Smith politely asked Anne to leave her house, but Anne said nothing but smiled and obeyed. After Anne left, Mrs. Smith packed their belongings in haste, her hands shaking as tears streamed down her face. And just as she prepared to leave, the rain began to fall, heavy. Within minutes, the entire house was flooding, water rising rapidly, swallowing everything in its path. Mrs. Smith ran frantically, trying to save what she could, but the situation spiraled out of control faster than she could comprehend. Then, without warning, an unseen force grabbed her, dragging her violently across the floor and into darkness. She found herself trapped in a room filling with water, the door sealed shut, the sound of rain echoing endlessly. She screamed, pounded on the door, begged for help, but no one came. As the water rose higher, reaching her chest, her neck, her chin, she began to lose hope. Her strength faded. As she slipped into unconsciousness, Mrs. Smith saw visions. Herself standing in a cemetery where the house once stood, surrounded by Anne and the neighbors, their true forms revealed as ghosts, their hands reaching for her, their faces twisted into expressions of hunger and malice, as they dragged her into their world. Just as she was about to drown, a door burst open, and she was pulled out into the rain by the old woman from the market, awakening to find the old woman standing before her, her presence now the only barrier between life and death. The old woman urged her to leave immediately, to take only what was necessary and never look back until she reached the main road, warning her that speaking of what had happened would bring death upon her. And with no time to question, Mrs. Smith obeyed, rushing to gather her children from the hospital, her heart heavy with loss, but driven by survival. They never returned. Mrs. Smith never spoke of what happened. She did not explain, did not answer their questions, her silence becoming her shield as they fled from the place that had nearly claimed them all, keeping the truth buried deep within her. But sometimes, in the quiet of the night, when the world is still, she remembers the house, the neighbors, and the truth she can never share, that for a brief moment in time, they lived among the dead and barely escaped with their lives. Some gifts are never truly free. You don't know what you'll be paying with.